passengers, you have arrived at another episode of the Ouroboros Express Devlogs. It's really nice to see you again. I'm Naj, the director of this darn game, and I'm joined by the wonderful Cameron Daxon. I just saw you giggle and it made me giggle.
I see. This
hey.
this is why we gotta hide the self view. This is what I'm saying. See, yeah.
No, but this is precisely the kind of energy we want on this episode. But yes, thank you so much for joining me, Cam.
Of course, one of the things that, not to like jump right into it, but
let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
One of the things that's always impressed me about how you have been running these, how you've been running this patch. What are we calling it? Patch 2 or like patch redux, whatever we want to call this.
Yeah, the redux.
Version 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
Or X2 Electric Boogaloo. One of the things that's been so very impressive and I think beneficial to how you've been directing this these couple of sprints is how you're really trying to make something for everyone, regardless of what we've done in the original game. It's like, let's bring in as many perspectives and views as possible as we can to talk about what it's been like, and things like this, doing a devlog like this, I think is so instructional and instructive, and I don't know, I think it's great. So props to you for setting these up.
Oh, and props to you for joining. Well, thank you so much. It's always been immensely, I guess, like informative for me to hear from the guests and you guys coming in and hearing it from your point of view as well, because I'm very much stuck in the weeds of like looking at it from bird's eye view, and it's really interesting to hear what you guys are doing day to day. But yes, before we get into all of that, Cam, would you like to introduce yourself?
I guess I should do that. The dangers of jumping right in. Hello, I'm Cameron. What am I? I'm a writer, storyteller, occasional creative producer, but I would say mostly my strength is in writing and editing. I've got a literature degree that I, for many years, didn't know what to do with, and I would say in the last maybe the last 3 to 5 years, have been okay, what do I do with this piece of paper? What do I do with all this? What do I do with all these books that I read? And so the journey to games writing has been kind of up and down. I've always been interested in video games ever since I was a little kid. Games writing is a new experience for me, because I love video games. I've never been very techie, unfortunately. I don't know if I have the discipline to I would like to develop it, but I don't know if I have the discipline or the brain to like be a programmer or something like that. So storytelling in games has always been fascinating to me, and so I would say only in the last year and a half have I given myself the permission to what if I tried my hand at this? I've always written about games. I've always enjoyed playing them and tried to view them through like a critical eye. And for a time, I wrote reviews for a small Canadian publication, and I hosted a podcast for them as well. So I'm adept at talking about games and mechanics and things like that. Actually, writing for them is like a whole different skill set, and it's been a fun one to develop.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, there's so many interesting things in there. The big question that's come to me is, knowing what you know now about like actually doing games writing, has it made you look back at some of your like critique or journalism and been like, maybe I should have been a little bit more open to things like that?
I think it's been both.
Right, yeah.
Because obviously, games writing, like, for anybody who's never tried it, writing for a game is really difficult, because there's a lot of unknowns. There's so many different ways to approach it. So I think what it has done for me is made me a little more charitable about certain writing in certain games.
Yeah.
To be oh, okay, they had to write it like that.
Yeah,
because of who knows how many factors. And it's also made me a little more critical of certain games to be like, this could be written better.
Yes, yeah.
I'm kind of doing a bit of an, as you described it, a creative audit lately. And so one of the things I've been doing is going back and looking at some of my old writing about like old reviews, old criticism that I've done. Yeah. And I think there's certain reviews I certainly would have like written better to be like, oh wait, now that I have this knowledge, I could write a little bit more about this aspect of game design or this aspect of the arc of the story or whatever. Yeah, I think on the whole it was this journey into game writing has made me a more sympathetic person to the struggles of game development.
Yeah.
Not that I was ever like a particularly harsh critic or anything like that. Like I like to think that I can always find something to celebrate about a game or a story or a movie or whatever it is. Like there's always something to like. That said, there's definitely criticism I've done. I make it sound like I've written like phenomenal criticism. It's like it's like fine. It was like reviews. It's fine. All that to say, I think the big takeaway is taking a bunch of master classes and working on a couple of game jams and doing more narrative type work has generally made me more, to repeat myself, a little more sympathetic about the myriad processes of game design.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely feel that way as well. So much like you, that's such a great way of putting it. I only really gave myself permission to pursue games writing and like game development just in general like a year ago. I feel like we've known each other for a year. We'll talk about it.
It's been about a year, yeah.
Yeah, it's been about a year. And and I feel like it's opened my eyes to so much about game development and the intricacies and like the quirks and stuff that's made me think, oh, I can see why this game had this like weird thing in it, and it was probably because of this reason. But you're absolutely right as well. Like some games I feel like a little bit less like forgiving of, because I'm like, hang on a second, with this budget.
Yeah. I was thinking about Forspoken that came out last year.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Which is a game that got a lot of criticism when it came out. An interesting Square Enix game. It kind of came and went. Just like people didn't like the writing. People didn't like a lot of the mechanics. Like it was kind of one of those like I wonder if it'll get like a critical reappraisal anytime soon.
Yeah, I have to wonder. Yeah.
But one of the things that I did notice about when I was reviewing it was you can kind of tell about 3/4 of the way through the game, like, oh, they probably ran out of budget around here.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
like suddenly cutscenes are a lot less detailed. Suddenly, like, why did you choose to do that instead of that? Like, there's a whole segment in the back chunk of the game that's like it's meant to be like a revelation. Like you're taking the player character, and instead of like a big bombastic cutscene or something like that, what you're doing is you're taking the player character and you're walking through what feels like a diorama, like people frozen in place, no animation, right?
Okay.
So. Yeah. And they're not even character models; they're like wireframes.
Huh. Okay.
Right? And it's kind of artistic. Like you can see, like, okay, here's what we have. Here's how we'll make it work.
Yeah.
So you walk into these tableaus of characters like frozen in poses, and then like voiceover will kind of come out of
Yeah.
So which is kind of like, okay, that's like a clever way to do that.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's also like this is Square Enix. This is one of the biggest publishers.
Yeah.
Like. So I don't know. It's interesting, and it makes me wonder. I would love to get like a postmortem or a breakdown or something like what happened during that game's development, because it had such a fraught launch. I'm really curious, like what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, what was going on? Yeah, that's true. I think one of my favorite YouTube channels actually is like he does a series called What Happened. Is it like Matt McMuxels or something?
You've talked about him before, yeah.
Yeah, and he goes into like, games with fraught production stories, and goes into, why was this game kind of a mess, and it always goes back to like decision making and money, like unsurprisingly. It's really interesting. Well, that kind of brings me to your journey into games and games writing. So do you want to talk a little bit about like, after giving yourself that permission, like what happened after that and where are we at now?
Yeah, so what happened? That's really funny. So I went through several life changes, I would say, in the last year, 2 years. And one of the things that became like very clear to me last, I would say June of 2023, somewhere in there, May, June 2023, I was like, I need to do something different than what I am currently doing for like a creative outlet.
Yeah.
Like I've written about games. I've done like a little tiny bit of creative writing, not very much, but I was like, I need some kind of an outlet that's different from what I'm currently doing. Thanks to the magic of internet algorithms, I was pointed towards various workshops and classes, and that is how I found. I'm sure you've talked about the narrative department on these devlogs before, but that's how I found Susan O'Connor's writing masterclass called the narrative department. And after some emails back and forth with her, I was kind of deciding. I don't know if you did this. I was sort of deciding between like a couple of different courses.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I probably can't afford all of these. Like, I should pick and choose maybe one or two. And basically took a chance on the narrative department masterclass, which I think was the right call. I mean, I'm here now.
Yeah.
That was sort of the trigger point in terms of doing something creative, doing something different. Through that, I met a bunch of folks who pointed me towards different writing challenges and different like exercise. Like, hey, do you want to do this thing with me? I'm like not even like official courses or whatever. Just like, hey, me and two friends are doing this random thing. Do you want to join us? It's just a writing. We're writing this thing over the course of a week or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was, I would say, taking that class and meeting 50, 100, however many creatives. Was sort of the jump start to like, oh, okay, I can have kind of this different creative journey instead of kind of fumbling forward from I mean, I'm still fumbling forward from one thing to the next, but instead of just sticking with the same like little box I'd put myself in.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. I started doing something different, and that was the right move, I think. Yeah. Again, I'm sure that other people you've had on these devlogs have had similar stories, but that's kind of where it started for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we were in the same cohort.
Yes.
But you were in a different, we were taking the course at the same time, but we were in different cohorts. But then what was happening was I was teaching a digital marketing bootcamp. At the same time, some of the sessions were going, so I had to stay up until 2 a.m. to attend your cohort's session. So I'm kind of so that's how we know each other.
Right.
That leads us to doing our first game jam together.
Yeah.
Is that your first game jam, by the way? Ever?
Yeah.
Santa's Secret?
I had tried. First of all, trying to find a game jam to join can be very prohibitive. Like the barrier for entry is kind of high. If you I guess it depends. For me, it felt really high. It felt like how do I join a game jam? I don't have any other skills beyond some writing. I don't know what to do. So I had tried before last December. I had tried to join a couple game jams, and I just didn't really know how to do it.
Right. Okay.
I did join one, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I had to back out. And it was also very unstructured, so it didn't. I kind of came in not knowing what I was doing. I didn't have a person to point me towards something. So I would say Santa's Secret was the first real game jam that I've done and completed for sure.
Yeah. So Small Lone Studios, first games. Santa's Secret. You, me, and a bunch of other people. Hopefully we'll get to meet them on this devlog as well. But yeah, we made our first ever game, completed a whole ass visual novel with Chrome Steel. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your role was on that project and difficulties and stuff? Anything?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the fun part about joining a game jam is that it can be very energetic. It's very chaotic.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of we don't know how to do this. We'll figure something out. And that was definitely the fun part of that project.
Yeah.
We had a lot of writers join, myself included, and Rob had pitched this great story, and we're like, okay, great. How do we make this story work? I don't know. Let's all just kind of sit down together and smash it out. Yeah. So over the course of a couple days, we hammered this outline out, and then once that when I say us, I mean the team of writers. I think it was like 10 people, a dozen people. It was a lot of folks.
So. Yeah, it was
a lot of folks for that first game.
Yeah.
And after we hammered out that outline, which I helped with, I was not like in charge of the outline by any means, but I helped. Like I threw some ideas in there that I think made it into the final game.
Mm-hmm.
Once the outline was hammered out, we basically assigned the outline, and we broke it into scenes, and then we assigned those scenes out to specific writers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in charge of writing a couple of scenes towards the back half of the game.
Right. Mm-hmm.
A couple of investigative scenes where the player character has to like find the crucial, like, oh my gosh, you found the smoking gun, or not a smoking gun in this case, but like a crucial object to solve the mystery of the game. So I got to write that scene. That was very fun. Him investigating an office and kind of poking around and like finding books and like, what's the right mystery, or how do I solve this mystery? And then after that, I helped write like a confrontation scene between the player character, a suspected suspect, and like the big bad. So kind of like a Mexican standoff thing where people are pointing guns at each other and accusing each other, and very dynamic sort of scene. So I helped write that. And outside of those like couple of little scenes, I helped. I'm not going to take ownership of this, but I'd say I helped kind of like link scenes together. Via like QA stuff, via some editing.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's coming back to me. Okay, do you want to talk a little bit about like the famous tone pass that happened?
Maybe. How about you set me up, and then I can kind of, we can talk about that. Yeah.
So one of the big learnings from Santa's Secret, because we're big on having postmortems and learnings and reflecting on what we've done, is we had like a really long like tone pass that happened for Santa's Secret, and I think it was down to like just like many inconsistencies and things like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I don't think the group will mind like at all.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
One of the challenges of having a big writing team.
Yeah.
And I think this, and I'll say, not even a big writing team, one of the challenges of any collaborative project, big team or small team, video games, movies, whatever it is you got a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Oh, yes.
And that's both the great thing about it and also like the complicated thing about it is because this first game jam that we did had so many writers on it, there was a bit of whiplash between certain scenes just of how people would talk. Yeah, of like, we noticed that in one scene, Chrome kind of sounds like this, and then in a later scene, he's maybe a little funnier, or he's a little jokier, or something feels a little bit different, and that's just, I think, naturally a thing that will happen when you have that many writers on it. So basically, kind of what I had to do is I had to come in with like a Zamboni and like, okay, how do we like smooth all this out? Not in a way to the camp. That's going on the resume now. I'm not saying it to like flatten out anybody's specific voices. Like, no. Like it was more to like highlight the characters. Let's try to keep these characters consistent as best we can. Again, that wasn't solely my job. I wouldn't say like I was in charge of this. I contributed to like what a lot of other people were doing. Basically, just kind of going through scene by scene by scene. Yes. And I did this with. Oh yeah, we did take a long. It took like a day. It really did take a whole, maybe 2 days. We basically sat down, me and two other writers, Rob and I want to say Kyle Scarcelli, maybe. Yeah. Two of the other writers on the team, and we just sat down for a whole ass day, and went scene by scene by scene, and just like read through it and be like, okay. Does that word make sense? Do we need like some different punctuation here? Like literally tried to go into the nitty-gritty of it.
So granular, my goodness.
It was very granular. It was fun. Yeah. It was fun, but it was very draining for sure. Yeah. It was necessary. It was very necessary. It was a thing that like had to be done. Yeah. And I think the final result benefited from all of that hard work. I mean, I guess you guys tell me. I don't know. I guess it's hard to say without seeing the previous drafts of the script.
Everyone message Cam directly and tell him what you think.
Message me directly and tell me what you think of the writing, I suppose. Yeah. The tone pass was a great thing. I think the process for the Oryx, the Ouroboros Express, we're doing a big patch for the second version of the game.
Yeah.
And I think the tone pass fat's going to be a little bit different, or it has proven to be different so far. It's much more structured and organized, and there's no deadline of like you have to get this done in 2 days. You know.
No.
So that's making a huge difference.
For everyone, for us, we love a slightly larger window of time. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always really healthy to like look back and be like, oh, we could have done this a little bit better, because then you can take that and make better processes. Because as you know, I'm very like process oriented. I like a bit of structure. So yeah, I mean, I remember looking back at that and being like, okay, how can we sort of nip this in the bud a little bit? And the way that we did it for the original version of Oryx was to have character experts, of which you were one for Darius. So yeah, I mean, you want to talk a little bit about like how that was different, being a character expert versus just being like one of the writers on the writer team and being assigned a chapter. Yeah.
Absolutely. So having a character expert, I think, a really good idea. And it's one of those ideas that you can take and apply to like anything in the game. Like it's the same as having like a senior artist or like an art director who's like, okay, like everything is sort of filtered through the lens of like the senior artist. And so we had multiple character experts on this dating sim to highlight, to make each of them very distinct. I think was one of the mandates, was like, okay, how do we make all these characters feel very unique? Obviously it was helped by strong creative direction. Like we had such distinct characters already that writing them distinctly wasn't much of a challenge. I think it was like okay, well, we're already off on the right foot here. So as a character expert, basically the idea was to take what you had given us as the director, to be like, okay, how do we like take these ideas and really like let them germinate, not germinate, but let them flourish.
Yeah.
So basically, we were just taking the themes that you laid out, combined with the player character, and like putting them in conflict with. When I say in conflict, I don't mean like aggressively. I just mean like, okay, in opposition. With the character that I was assigned, which was Darius, and how do we kind of make these people bounce off of each other? Basically, my job was to be like, would he say that? How would they respond to this?
Yeah, how does he say about that? Yeah.
I think we were able to achieve it for the most part in the first version. There's definitely some parts like going back and playing through it now and be like, okay, like I see what we were trying to do, and I don't know 100% if we executed, like, you know, it's a game jam. We're trying to get it done in a month.
Yeah.
Not saying that it's bad by any means, but just like there's points where it's like, okay, I think we could flesh the idea of like having a character where we can push it like even further and like really make this character even more inhabited, even more grounded, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it really felt like for me that Darius had like this whole life and this whole backstory, and as it happens, he did, because I think one of the funniest things that you and Tiago, who's the other character expert for Darius, did was that I think it seemed like you guys were having loads of like conversations about all the lore about Darius.
It's true.
Do you want to talk about that? Because it seemed like you guys were like having so much fun, like thinking about all the lore.
Yeah, well, Tiago and I had a very fun kind of yes and relationship going on in regards to the backstory of this character, because he would be like, well, what if when he says this, what if he's talking about this? And it's like, oh yeah, and if he's talking about this, maybe he's referencing this other thing that happened. It's like stuff that's like doesn't necessarily end up on the page or in the game. But hopefully, and I think we were able to do this, hopefully you can feel kind of the weight behind certain sentences or certain moments in the game where it's like, oh, he's saying something and there's like, you know, matching with the art expression or whatever, he's having kind of like a sad look on his face. Maybe they're talking about something from their past. And even if you don't get like specifically what that is, hopefully you can still feel that there's some kind of weight behind that.
Yeah, some history. Yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed what you guys came up with. Like, well, all of the character experts, because it felt like I kind of had come up with the concepts and just given it to you guys, been like, okay, you guys go, and you guys came out with fully fledged like people.
I would actually love to hear from you about that process of like, because I know you were nostalgically posting some old character art that didn't make it into the game.
Yeah.
But obviously we had these three characters who kind of rose to the top.
Yeah.
And I would love, I guess, your thoughts on what you originally thought. Mm-hmm. Especially, I guess, particularly for Darius, since we're talking about him, about them.
Boy. Yeah.
And what kind of ended up in the game. Like, how was that process for you?
Yeah. So, we originally started out with 6 romanceable characters. Or, like, I did anyway. Like, I had a big old mirror board, and I had, like a mood board for each of the characters, just kind of like a mishmash of what I thought, like, they were a combination of. And then looking back at it, I was like, okay, there's no way we can do 6 characters. So we're gonna whittle it down to 3, especially for a 30-day game jam. That seems mad. When I was looking at them, I was thinking, okay, who of these look so different from each other that they would immediately stand out? So I was thinking of like, because I don't think about just about the writing, but also about the visual presentation. So I was thinking about things like silhouettes and colors and like visual references as well. So Darius is very like cosmic, and Asha is very of the sun, and like, you know, she's like bright yellow, and she's like, you know, she's resplendent basically. Where Susura is like very earthy and green and, you know, very grounded in his own way. So it felt like these 3 in particular were so different from each other and would really stand out in their own way. Whereas like it felt like maybe the other 3, even though I also loved them, maybe they wouldn't have like stood out as much. Even though there's definitely, I feel like, space for them in the future for something else, another project.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought they had like something really like distinct about the 3 of them, and also thinking about the 3 of them with Vivi and with Urshu all in like one room together, like how would they all look against each other? I think when I was thinking about like the characters as well, I was thinking about so. I mean, it's not really a spoiler, like, but one of the game's main themes is grief, and I was thinking about, well, what are like different stories around grief and acceptance and love? You know, like what are the seeds of that I can spin out into like someone's backstory? So yeah, it was that was my thought process essentially, and also I think there was a fair amount of like buy-in from like everybody else from Small Known, because I presented the mirror to them and I was like, which of these do you guys like resonate with the most, you know? And it was those 3 as well. I think people felt very strongly about those 3 too. So,
awesome.
Yeah. If you weren't working on Darius, who's your second choice to have been a character?
I think Susura.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he has kind of this fun energy, this sort of laconic like attitude that I imagine was very fun to write.
Yeah.
Because like he's like a little bit goofy, but also like, you know, like very like grounded, and there was something cool about that character that I really liked.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, was there with Darius, is there something you really resonate with writing him as this character expert? Would you say there's a lot of like you in him?
Let's see. I think the things that really stood out to me about that character is he has a sort of rigidity to him. They've got a real sense of inflexibility that was fun to kind of mess with.
Right.
Like this is a character who sees things, or who has historically seen things, like this is how the way things have to go. This is the way things is the way I've always done things. And it was fun to sort of pick at that. And get them to realize, well, like maybe if you're not giving yourself the grace to look at things from a different perspective, then you're gonna forever sort of be locked into this thing. I don't know how much of those themes like came across in the actual character, but that's sort of what attracted me to writing for Darius.
Yeah.
It's also just fun to think, how do you write for a character that's otherworldly? How do you write for, I mean, and this applies to all the characters, I suppose, but like, because you have your human character, you have your player character who's like, I'm approaching things from the human perspective, and then it's like, okay, well, how do we view the world through someone who's been alive for 1,000 years, or who doesn't experience emotion the same way we do, or even something as simple as like being able to telepathically hear others' thoughts. Like, how does that impact who you are and how you think of others? So it was neat to step into that headspace, I think.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say a lot of that informed the way Darius looks, because the very dark clothing and the high collar, it's like it's all meant to look very rigid and structured.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, it definitely did come out, and yeah, it was part of the briefing I gave to the art team as well, who I think did a wonderful job. But he's got a bit of a squishy center as well, with his little tentacles peeping out.
That's true.
Yeah. I would say I really enjoyed reading the scenes with where Vivi is like really like prodding Darius, and he's like really letting it get to him. Like, were those the scenes that you really enjoyed? Like, what would you say were the things that you found a lot of juice in writing?
Yeah, it was fun finding a way for them to flirt with each other. Was fun. Yeah, because she has like, again, strong character direction for Vivi, for the player character, who's like, I have a pretty distinct sense of like, okay, this is who she is. And pairing that with Darius, it was fun to find a way to be like, okay, well, how would they sort of like jab at each other? How would they flirt? And it turns out it's like, well, they're going to be kind of mean to each other. Is sort of what it turned into. So putting these two very flinty people in a room together and watching them sort of jab at each other, and then it's like, oh, it's not quite an enemies to lovers stereotype, but like it is a little bit of like these people who are like, we're just gonna be a little bit rude to each other, but it's like, but what's underneath the surface? So that was very fun to write. It was also fun to write, okay, how would this character make like a joke? Like, how do they relate? How do they, like, if they're trying to make a joke, how are they going to do it? And the answer is like a lot of sarcasm. I don't know how much of that like comes through in the writing, but this is a person who's pretty like short and blunt and like, well, I'm just going to try to like toss off a comment. So yeah, it was fun. And again, the challenge of game writing is like, okay, well, how do you do it like efficiently? You know what I mean? We don't have a chapter of a book to spend with these people. We have 400 words or 1,000 words or whatever it is, which is not that much back and forth.
No,
when we're going back and forth.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the breakdown we kind of came across is that we have a first part of the day, which is like 800 words or something, and then we had like the second part of the day, which is 1,200 words, which is not a lot. You really have to pack a lot of like meaning and put a lot of like reading between the lines in that kind of writing. Yeah, I mean, how would you say you're quite good at that sort of like efficiency in writing? Is it something that you're working on?
I would never say. I would never say I'm quite good at anything. To be clear, I've always admired authors who can convey something efficiently. Like Ernest Hemingway is very like influential author for me. Who a guy who could just take a couple of words and convey a lot of meaning. I don't know if it was Hemingway who said it, but there's an author who talks about like, well, like you simply write what is necessary. You simply cut away anything that's not necessary, and it's like, oh, that's all you have to do.
Oh, just simply do that.
Simply do that. I think there's great value in letting the audience member, the reader, the player, or whatever it is, kind of in like let their own imagination in. I think that's not saying like I have anything to do with that, but I think if you're letting your writing be kind of spare, the reader, the audience member, the player can layer their own interpretations in. I think that's valuable, especially because interactivity is so important for games.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even if all you're doing is clicking a mouse or, deciding between one of 3 dialogue options, like letting their own life experience kind of flow in is so important. Like the interactivity,
Gosh, yeah. I Yeah, that was actually a really eye-opening thing for me when I was originally taking the narrative department class, because we had this thing where we had to make a twine game, and we had to like do our own take on Little Red Riding Hood, and then I had a pro reader read it, and they gave me feedback, and it was so granular to the point of like, think about giving the player agency over this particular moment, and think about how long this paragraph is, and think about like all of these different elements that I hadn't even considered. That was like really eye-opening, and that really came into full view when we were working on like Santa Secret and Oryx as well, because like, oh my gosh, it's quite confronting to read your own writing and be like, this is actually really long and like not fun to play as well, you know? Like, did you have like eye-opening moments like that? Like, did anything click for you?
Oh yeah, that in regards to that exercise, or like in general for
just
these
in
games?
general, just like working on like, you know, like really practicing game writing.
Yeah. I think being verbose, I think I have I don't know, as much as I like Ernest Hemingway, as much as I've tried to like emulate certain writing styles, I think my writing tends to be a little verbose if I'm not careful with it.
Right.
Just because, you know, I like writing. I like long convoluted sentences and like big words and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's fun to write like that.
Yeah.
But I think when you're putting it in the context of a game, you can confront it very quickly with like, oh geez, this is overwritten. This is overwritten. It's too verbose. It's too like, I'm finding myself like click, 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 click. Like, I want to skip past it.
Definitely.
So I think being efficient with your language, being clear and to the point, I think is generally to the benefit for a lot of games writing, because so much of games writing is trying to convey information.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, truly, yeah. There's an objective, yeah.
Objectives, things like that. So I guess it doesn't apply as much when you're writing a visual novel. Like, you have a little bit more leeway to get more wordy, to have more dense writing. But still, I think at the end of the day, when I'm going over my own writing for any of those couple projects that I worked on with you guys, I think I lean towards like, this could be sparser, this could be a little more spare.
Yeah.
I think overall.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's interesting because so we have a mutual friend, another Cameron
Yes.
with a Y. I worked on a visual novel with them, and we divvied up the writing, and it was interesting because our writing styles are so different. So what we came upon was that I'm all about the brevity. I'm very sparse with my writing. I'm like, if there's something that needs to be said, I will say it and no more.
Sure.
And Cameron was like, they could stand to be a bit more in this scene. You know, it's a love story. And I was like, what? Like, what? It's just really funny. But, you know, it makes me laugh because I think about our different backgrounds as well. And that's also informing, like, how we write. So, you know, you your like literature background and your love of writing and things like that. I come from a marketing background, and everything's like got to have an objective. Everything's a call to action, you know, and everything's very like to the point. So that's really informed how I write as well. But I love like coming across different styles of writing, and that was like one of the really fun parts of working with you guys on Santa Secret and Oryx as well. Like seeing all the styles come together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, was there well, like speaking of like writing styles and I guess like working styles, was there anything about like collaborating with such a like big group of people or such a diverse group of people that really made you go, oh, people are so different from me?
Oh yeah, every single day. I think one of the benefits and not curses, but like certainly one of the benefits was as you just said, seeing like diversity of style, seeing different ways of different work processes.
Yeah,
that's really helpful because you might find something that you've never been exposed to that works for you. So like that's massively helpful. Like having different viewpoints, so useful. I think what it does for me is it also activates my imposter syndrome. Like, unfortunately, that's my own stuff. But putting myself up against 30 extraordinarily talented other people who are like great artists or musicians or like have organizational mastermind, like seeing that kind of stuff and being like, well, I can't do that. Like, I don't know how to do that. Like, that's so out of my wheelhouse. I don't even know how. Like, it makes me feel a little intimidated.
Right.
Which is bizarre, because, like, no, I'm not a visual artist. Like, why would I get, like, oh my god, why would I be intimidated about seeing, like, a cool storyboard? Like that doesn't affect me in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But what it does is it highlights to me just how much goes into a big creative work and how many skills you could have.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And it's like, it kind of makes me want to do more things. And it's like, a lot of the time it's being confronted with the reality of, I don't have the bandwidth to do that. I don't have there's not enough hours in the day to learn how to be, a fantastic musician or whatever. And accepting that. Obviously, that doesn't happen all the time. I think I was only on the bad days, on my your bad brain day or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is a thing that I was surprised at how often I was like, oh geez, like it really did get me down sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is it's kind of an interesting thing to realize about myself, to be like, like as much as I love and need to be in a room or a virtual room with other creative people, it can also be very like overwhelming sometimes.
Right.
Which I guess I guess that comes down to like be confident in yourself and trust that what you are doing is useful and good. And if it's not, someone will help you get there.
Yeah.
So there was many moments of like, let me ask for help. Let me just send up a signal flare and see if someone can help me through how to approach this problem.
Yeah.
I know there was many moments early on, especially in the development of Oryx, where I was like, I was having a really hard time wrapping my mind around the attraction and decay meter.
Okay, yeah. Let's
and
talk about it. Yeah.
Incorporating the idea of, okay, the choices you make as a character will determine the outcome of the game. Like, that's standard visual novel stuff. But also, it's going to be like, you're going to have this sort of path of degradation over the course of the game depending on what you do, and it's like it's going to result in your character like literally fading away. And I was having such a hard time getting on board with, well, how do I like incorporate that into these scenes? And the answer is you ask other people for help and ask them to explain it to you very slowly. And yeah, really, and maybe make a cool spiral flowchart that helps me. Okay, I can visualize it now.
Is there that actually help you? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Wow. No. So because something again, one of your great strengths is, and I don't know if I'm sure you've thought about this many times, especially with your all your backgrounds coming in. But one of your great strengths is like, okay, if this concept isn't reaching people, let me approach it from a different angle. Let me give them another viewpoint to look at this problem through. Whether that is a flowchart, whether it is like a column, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet. Like, I think you're pretty good at like, well, other people have different ways to view the world.
Yeah.
How do I capitalize on that? How do I speak to them in their language? Like, I don't know. I think you're pretty good at like intuiting how to reach people.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think I really enjoy that stuff. Like, I really enjoy thinking about different frameworks or different filters to, I guess, rearrange like information or data into like present to people. And so like the spiral thing that we're talking about was a way for me to show this is the journey that the train is on, and it's not actually a loop, and this is how it's somewhere in my production log. So if you guys want to take a look at that, that's it's totally there. But also, I think one of the things that really helped me, but I think helped a lot of you guys in the writing team as well, was thinking about the different chapters and thinking about how the characters manifest the different themes of those chapters as well. So yeah, it really is like one of my favorite things to like see that click in people. I really enjoy that piece for people to be like, oh, okay, and I'm like, yes, I did it.
Yeah, well, it's what you just said, rearranging information in a way that makes sense. Like so many times, I think as especially with writing. Writing is such a solitary activity that oftentimes it's hard to rearrange information for yourself.
Right.
But because games are so collaborative, it's like you're probably naturally going to get a lot of those, like, well, here's how I, input, output information.
Yeah.
So that was extremely valuable to kind of take different viewpoints and perspectives and apply them to writing and how to structure scenes and information. I think that was one of the big takeaways for me. It was like, okay, so many different viewpoints. This is really valuable to me.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. I mean, I will. That's so funny because being in a director role is really interesting because you kind of, I think one of the best traits to have as a director is to kind of make peace with the fact that you are not the smartest person in the room. You are the best person at coordinating the smartest people in the room.
Yeah.
Or like leading the vision, but you're not by any means the best at any of the areas. and then making peace with that, and also not feeling like, I guess, like, well, threatened is a strong word, but not feeling like, that flare up of like, oh god, like, this person's so much better at me at this thing. Like, for me, like, it's kind of comfortable being in the director's seat to be like, oh, that person is so much better at me than that thing. I'm so glad they're there.
No, I think there is this might just be like a human thing. I think there is an instinct to kind of like assert, like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That can be, depending on how you're doing that, it can be detrimental, I feel. But you have to have that self-awareness. And I guess that humbleness to be like, I don't know how to do this thing. I can articulate what I want from it, but I may not know how to exactly do it. So I'm going to rely on other people for help. And have that back and forth feedback to achieve the vision that I want. But yeah, I get where you're coming from. There's a temptation to like, let me prove my how dominant I am at this thing.
Yeah,
like,
I'm perfect at everything.
Yeah.
I'll do this whole project and like it's so stupid.
Exactly.
And like I think that's certainly something like 19-year-old me would have like had a massive chip on her shoulder about. Like, I can do everything. I'm good at it. I'm good at it. But now, I'm like, oh my god, I'm so glad we have like really talented artists to do this thing that I'm not good at. And that would find really difficult.
Well, it takes the pressure off, and because all you got to do is give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Like when someone comes in at the top of their game and is like, let me show you my passion, let me show you the thing that I'm extremely good at, and then I can just kind of bask in it, really, and be like, that's great, like, approved, like that's tremendous, like in the case of the writing, it was great to be with Tiago. And just to kind of be like, oh my god, you are better, as good or better than I am at this, and just to be like, well, what do you think about this scene? And be like, yeah, Tiago, like, you nailed it. Like, I can just kind of sit back and be like, this is great,
Yeah. I mean, you guys as a writing team were great, and I think one of the best decisions I think we made for production was to have buddy systems as character experts, not like a singular person for a character expert, because what that gave each of our characters was more depth, because they were like the result of two people. Or maybe like 2.5, because like I came up with the concept for the character, and not just like through the filter of like only one person, so they felt that much more, I don't know, like filled out, and I think there was a lot of like really great conversations happening through each of the character experts as well. So yeah, that was really wonderful to see.
Yeah, and I want to call it, so not to interrupt you, but I want to mention the new writers that we brought on for the second patch. Who, one, are fantastic, but two, they were great because they went through and really, I think, psychoanalyzed these characters just as much, if not more so, than the first go-round, right? Like, it was awesome to see new people come in and sort of internalize, like, okay, well, this is how this person would react, and this is what they would do in this situation. It was interesting to see how other people approach that as well. Like, I thought that was really cool.
That was amazing. And we've been very lucky to have like very talented people from the original and to join us on this new patch as well. I'm so excited for people to see all the new developments. But yeah, that is very cool. It's like and it's like some distance from me, right? Like where I came up with the concept and then I kind of gave it to you guys, and then we have new people taking on like that stuff as well. It's like, wow, it's really rolled into its like own cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's that's been wonderful. When did Oryx start feeling real for you, like as a game?
Wow, that's interesting, because I remember that month I was traveling a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, GDC and
I went to GDC.
Stuff, yeah.
And then I want to say it was either the week before or the week after I was in Vegas for a different job.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember I was very like I wasn't like in my office here. I was like out and about in the world.
Yeah.
So there was a period of maybe like a week or 2 weeks where I was kind of checking in sporadically, where I was kind of like, I'll write my scene and then like go do something else, and then I'll come back the next day, and maybe things are a little further along, maybe they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it didn't really, to me, it didn't feel like this is a game until probably maybe like 3 weeks in.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of when everything was sort of converging together.
Yeah, we had like some rough builds put together, and we could see the character art and stuff, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's not a knock on anybody. I'm just saying, like, for me, it was kind of like I didn't get to see a lot of it until those later stages. Then I was kind of like, oh wow, this is what everybody's been doing. Like, this is awesome. Like that was really cool to see, like, because I was kind of like siloed off in my little. I mean, we talk so much about collaboration, but it is very easy to like kind of cut yourself off from everything that's happening if you're not being proactive about talking to other teams, getting to other departments, and seeing what they're up to. It's very easy to find yourself siloed off. So I definitely, unfortunately, I definitely did that to myself a couple of times. So when I finally was like, okay, I want to see what's going on, and I was so surprised and amazed and impressed by the work that everybody else had been doing. It was so cool to see it. So I would say it's better to do that earlier than later. Like, don't do what I did if you're working on a game, or if you're doing a game jam or something like that. Like that interdepartmental collaboration from the jump is so important. Just because like you're gonna be more creative when you're indulging in other people's creativity, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's so true. And even if that's like, that's not even just like within your own department, but I think like appreciating what the art team have done, and appreciating what like the audio team have done, and like I've found it so fulfilling to see how the different departments work and how insanely like different like each of the processes are. Watching like Micah and like the programming team work, is hugely inspiring as well, because they'll just like they're the code wizards. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. The code wizards,
Yeah.
Incredible stuff. So yeah. Well, actually, that's wonderful, because like I wanted to ask you the question of, what would you tell Cam 1 year ago to do if you could time travel and be like, don't be stupid, do this now.
Sure. You're saying like last September, Cameron.
Yeah. Last
okay.
September, Cam.
Yeah, honestly, that's great.
Yeah.
I would say don't be afraid to take more risks earlier.
Oh,
I think
okay.
so much of my creative life has been defined by, I mean, I just mentioned it, comparison to other people. Fear of, is this good? Is this worth showing to anybody? I'll just keep it to myself. Like,
okay.
for me, and I'm not saying that like everybody has to do this. Like, there's obviously great value in like having something that's just for you.
Yeah.
I believe very strongly in like journaling just for yourself. You don't have to show everything you ever create to everybody.
Yeah.
But also on the flip side of the coin, I think I would have benefited a year ago from like showing things to other people instead of only doing that by joining like a group activity.
Oh, interesting.
Like I think I could have benefited from being like, hey, I wrote this thing. Are you interested in seeing it? Just because that fuels more creativity because you're getting feedback from somebody.
Yeah.
And also it kind of gets you over that hump of like nothing is ever good enough to show somebody.
Yeah.
Like it,
Yeah.
it's so easy to be self-defeating about it. And a year ago, I definitely would have said, or I not definitely, but a year ago, if I had a time portal and I could go back a year, and I would just be like, hey, just take the step. Don't be afraid to show somebody what you're working on.
Yeah.
And also, just work on something. Doesn't have to be a fully fleshed out idea. You can just work on something. You can just do it.
Yeah.
I took a writing challenge this February of this year, and one of the great takeaways from it was the goal was write a short story every day for a month, like 500 words or 1,000 words, something small.
Yeah.
And all we had to go off of was a prompt that was one sentence.
Right. Okay.
And that was so empowering, just to be like, hey, you can get a prompt from anything. You can just crack open a book and be like, okay, my prompt is Johnny opened the door.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, great, that's enough to go off of. Like, you can find a spark in anything. So yeah, I think that the things I would tell myself a year ago would be, you don't have to wait until something is perfect to show somebody, and just start. Which I know is
start. Yeah.
Just start. I know it's basic. It's very basic advice. I have in my garage a piece of poster board that I stole from a college improv show.
Okay.
Why not?
As you do, yeah.
As you do, and on the piece of poster board is a question. Why haven't you yet? Why haven't you yet? And for a long time, I had that like over my door.
Yeah.
Why haven't you yet? And you could just look at it and be like, yeah, why haven't you yet? And that can apply to anything. Why haven't you washed the dishes yet?
No, it's so true.
You know,
definitely.
why haven't you sent that application in yet?
Yeah.
Like, and it's not meant to be like aggressive. It's not meant to be demeaning. I took it down eventually because I think I was getting a little too much of like, oh fuck, why haven't I yet?
Yeah.
But I saved it because I still think it's valuable.
Yeah.
Just to like encourage you to. I mean, it all comes down to just start.
Yeah,
You know?
just start something. Yeah. I think the fear of being silly of feeling silly can get in the way of a lot of like happiness. You know, like and I've been made very happy by collaborating with you guys at Small Loan, and you know, there's been a lot of like moments where like, oh god, the game jam ends in a day and there's still so much to do, but it's been hugely like educational and like wonderful, and like I cannot believe where we are at now at this point in time. We have 2 completed games together. You know, that's not something I would have dreamed I'd have.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's so cool to have. So yeah, I mean, well, this feels like a very nice place for us to wrap up. So what I would love for you to do is let people know, where can they find you? Is there anything you're working on? Is there anything you want to shamelessly plug? This is your moment to shine.
Sure, absolutely. So I do have a website that is constantly being updated with new information. camdaxon.com. Has a couple samples of my work, and there's also a little contact form on there if you ever want to reach out to me for anything. It's got my email on there. So yeah, camdaxon.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as Cameron Daxon. You can just I'm not like unlisted or private or anything like that. You can just search me on there if you ever want to talk business. That's what LinkedIn is for, right? Allegedly. Beyond that, I guess I'm on Blue Sky too, at Action Daxon. I know Blue Sky just got a huge influx of users like yesterday or something because of some bad decisions from the X side of things. So I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on LinkedIn, I have my own website. Those are kind of the 3 ways to get in touch with me. Let's see, anything I'm working on. With a bunch of other narrative folks, T&D folks, we're with that same group that I wrote short stories with earlier this year. We're doing another one of those, Short Story September. So I'm working on still kind of ideating on a short story that hopefully will be out by the end of the month. We're working on another Small Loan project as well. Very early days. I'm working as a narrative lead on that.
Yes.
Can we talk about it? Can we not talk about it? Like,
I think we can like dance around it. Yeah,
we can tease it. Okay, so this is kind of a folk horror game is sort of the thrust of it. There's going to be puzzle elements, hopefully, and ideally a kind of a twisty-turny dark story. That has been very fun to ideate and develop, and then hopefully we can execute something very awesome eventually.
Yes, we will. Yeah,
Okay.
100%. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Cam. It's always a delight to hang out with you, and this time it just so happens we're recording, so I hope you enjoyed it as well. So yeah, to everyone watching, thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. Watch out for future Ouroboros Express devlog episodes, and can't wait for us to show the game to you. My goodness, so soon. But in the meantime, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.